have Public Property Commissioner. Good afternoon. Commissioner, I know I'm assuming you don't have any testimony, but I know we have questions by at least one member for you. So I'm going to go directly to that member. Councilman Green.
Give me 1 second, okay? Thank you, Council President. Just trying to get my notes here together. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming. I know you had prior, we were going to meet before, but then you had a conflict and then also need to leave here earlier. So I want to get some perspectives on, I know there's been a lot of back and forth regarding certain contracting with the city through your department, and I wanted to get more in reference to, and I missed the earlier testimony because I'm not sure if you had a chance to provide some more background, but in reference to some of the more recent contracts in reference to the Quadplex, can you give me some perspective on the diversity and inclusion that will occur?
Mm-hmm. So, Bridget Collins Greenwald, Department of Public Property Commissioner. So, for the triplex contract, there is a 53%, there was a 35% goal, I believe, and a 5% or 7% goal. Well, excuse me, because I have these new contacts, I swear, and they're bifocal, so I'm having a hard time looking at this. So for that, so the contract comes in at the moment 53%.
Okay, and so that's, the goal is 53%?
No, that's what it is. The goal's lower than that.
The goal was
Yes.
35 and actual 53%?
Yes.
And of that 53%, can you give me some perspective on the makeup of the subs on the contract?
Sure. So the subs, so two of the main subs are janitorial, and the other main sub is security. They make up the bulk of the subcontracts. So the custodial sub is a company called CMTI.
That's custodial?
Yes.
CMTI, okay.
Yes. And the security sub is a group called Engage with an I, INGAGE. Both minority-owned subcontractors.
And
So the amounts in total for them, for the whole contract, make up about 7.2 roughly million of the 15.
okay. And so CMTI, and what was the other company?
Engage with an I, INGAGE.
Okay. With an I. And where are these companies based out of?
So Engage is based in Philly, and CMTI is based in Florida.
Okay, so CMTI is based in Florida, and Engage is based in Philadelphia?
Yes.
And what is their track record in reference to, well, let me step back. As part of the contracting process, were you engaged, or is that just strictly through JLL in reference to their vetting of the subcontractors?
We are not engaged in the part where they pick the subcontractors.
Okay. Is there any concern in reference to these subs, their capacity to do the work as subcontractors for JLL?
JLL had no concerns, and so I don't have any concerns if they didn't have any concerns.
I guess this is part of a more macro concern that, you know, we talk about the issues of poverty in the city of Philadelphia, and we've got to make sure we get the best companies to do the best services for the city of Philadelphia. But one of the concerns I've had over the years, and it's not just this administration, but more so just a general thought process in how we do procurement, is that we're not using the city of Philadelphia as an economic development engine, and that we are, you know, bringing in goods and services from companies from wherever, just looking at dynamics as opposed to what impact it may have in the city of Philadelphia. And so I guess my question is, what steps are we taking from a procurement within public property to try to use local-based businesses that can provide the same level of quality work and services.
So I should start out by saying both firms will be hiring locally, so the employees that are employed by the current subs stay on. They continue on. So the employees themselves do.
Right, but
As for what public property,
well, let me just jump in. I mean, but employing locally is you're employing people in the city of Philadelphia, but you're not growing businesses locally. So although they may be hiring people from the city of Philadelphia, at least CMTI is based in Florida, as opposed to being based here in the city of Philadelphia. So to me, we should be doing more from, as a city perspective, to growing local businesses, because the revenue that we are using for procurement is coming from the taxpayers and business owners from the city of Philadelphia. So we as a city should be doing a better job to use qualified local-based businesses that can do the work.
so the Department of Public Property only has this one major contract, so that is the one contract that we have. So part of the criteria is there is a selection piece for local, there's a selection piece for minority, there's a selection piece for experience. On that end, this is the only contract we really have. So what we do in general, like globally for the city, we participate in the CAO's minority vendor fairs, which they try to engage local businesses to bid on other jobs and whatnot. But as for public property, we only have this one major
Now,
contract.
I understand it's one major contract, but this is an issue across all city departments. Was there any engagement with the entity that was selected in reference to how they're going to procure local, how they're going to procure their subs?
So we do not have those conversations in public property. What we do is we refer the prime contractor to the OEO office and have them work with that group to see how they would procure their subs.
Was there any concern from your perspective that the firm that was selected would or would not be using companies based from Philadelphia?
Was there any concern on my direct part
Or just
that they were
generally?
not going to use firms from Philadelphia? No.
Okay. Now, Engage, that's a Philadelphia-based company?
Yes.
Okay. How long have they been in capacity here in the city of Philadelphia?
I do not know that information because as for right now, our contract is with JLL and they are still in negotiations with us and they are also in negotiations with their subs. So I'll have more information as the contract goes through the process, but it's not, we're still in the negotiating phase right at
So you're
this
still
moment.
negotiating with JLL?
Yes.
So as part of that negotiation process, okay, let me just step back and I'll get to that question. How long will this contract last?
This contract will last 1 year with the option to renew 3 times.
So this brings us back to the conversation we just had with the city commissioners, which is an issue that predates this administration, but this process of having 1 year contracts with multiple renewals, which does not provide those contracts an opportunity to have any engagement or oversight from city council.
I just know historically we bid this contract this way for the past, I guess, 25 years it's been in place. And
Right,
we
and
just
that's why I
followed
said
that.
this issue predates this administration, but it's an issue that's been historically occurring through multiple administrations where contracts are 1 year contract and multiple year renewals, but in essence, these are multi-year contracts. And so, and this is not so much a question for you, it's more of a rhetorical comment that various administrations over the years have done this, where as opposed to doing a multi-year contract, which is required by the Home Rule Charter to come to City Council, it's a 1 year contract with multiple renewal years, which then does not come to City Council for any type of oversight. And so this causes a continual concern from my observation from the City Council's perspective, because we're not able to, one, engage in this conversation, and two, there's no public hearing on these type of large multi-year contracts, that we're using city resources from the taxpayers to fund. So if I'm a taxpayer and I want to get some perspective on a large contract that the city is giving, which is based on revenue coming either from my business or from me personally, I don't have an opportunity to engage. And so I think this is something that I've raised this issue in the past, even before coming into council, that this concept of one-year contract and multiple-year renewals is problematic. So as you're going through these negotiations with the vendor that was selected, will you be, as part of the negotiation process, will you be talking to them about their subcontracts?
We, public property, will not be talking to them about their subcontractors. They've submitted their proposal to us. We negotiate now on things like price and those options, but no, we won't be talking to them specifically about their subcontractors and their performance. We'll hold JLL to standards, and JLL will be required to meet those standards.
So as part of your negotiations regarding price, and what was the other aspect?
We do price, we do things like insurance requirements, terms and conditions, things like that.
But
Scope, but the scope's like pretty much determined by the RFP, but that's what we negotiate back and
And
forth on.
so the subs that they use will have no impact on the things you'll be negotiating in your
We
deliberations?
negotiate just with JLL, then JLL would negotiate with its subs. So if we came to JLL with something and they had to go to their subs, they would do that. We do not get in the middle of a prime and their subs.
And so it's your perspective that because JLL submitted these subs as part of their proposal, that you don't have any concerns or issues with the subs being able to do the work that's required?
Well, we're going to hold JLL to standards, so we expect them to meet those standards. So I would have to assume as a business, they would hold their subs to those same standards that we're going to require.
So when will this contract go into effect?
July 1st.
July 1st of this year? Mm-hmm. Okay. And what's the transition process from current entities providing services to the when the contract will go?
So there's a transition that takes place on the ground, with management and workers. There's a transition that takes place where the workers that I had mentioned a little bit earlier are go to JLL, find out everything that JL is about the company, and then there's a 90-day transition between the existing company and the new company.
Okay. And so the contract's supposed to go into effect as of July 1st, but historically, contracts, are supposed to be started in the beginning of a new fiscal year, but not get executed in reality until sometime later, like September, October. Do you anticipate that occurring with this contract?
No, I anticipate this one will be ready to go July 1st.
So it'll be ready July 1st. And so, as of right now, you're already moving forward with a transition with the current entities that are doing the work now?
We're moving forward, yes, preliminary on a transition, yeah, it's a transition plan.
Okay, so you're in a process of putting together that transition plan?
We have a transition plan that we're working on with JLL, and there are processes that have to be met. They're legal processes from the charter that I really don't know all the specifics of. Law would have to get into with you, but that's what we're working on now. Like, what are their legal requirements per letting subs know and all that stuff. We're letting workers know. There's a Worker Displacement Act, so notifications have to go out. That's the process we're in now. And then the plan would be, okay, how do you transition from, these are the projects that we're working on now, how do they transition to the new company, things like that.
And so from your perspective, because you're just in negotiation with JLL, you haven't had any interaction or communication with any of the subs that either JLL will use or any existing subs. And so how that transaction and transition is occurring, you would not be aware of?
I would not be part of how the transition would occur between the subs, no.
Okay. From your experience in reference to other contracts, when there is a transition like this and companies reach out to a new vendor, historically, what is the process of that communication?
I don't know. This is the only major contract that we have, and there's never been a new vendor up until now.
Okay. Because from my understanding, various entities have reached out to JLL in reference to issues of diversity and inclusion, and there was no response. And I think just from a business perspective, that's concerning that anytime a new entity is coming into the city of Philadelphia to do business, you would think that they would be, I've seen other corporations, when they come into the city of Philadelphia to do work, they have a vendor fair or a introduction meet and greet where any vendor that's interested in participating with them has the opportunity to meet with that corporation. My understanding that did not occur. In addition, outreach was made to JLL, from my understanding, and that was not reciprocated, which from a business perspective, I think is kind of odd when you come into a new city and that's not occurring.
That is contradictory to what I've been told. I've actually been told that JLL has met with one of the main subcontractors, and they were in conversations about maybe other services that contractor can provide.
Okay. And once again, there's all kinds of different perspectives on different things. I'm just trying to get a sense. But from your perspective, you have a strong feeling in reference to them going forward with this contract. And so how will your oversight occur of the contract? Because it's 1 year with multiple year renewals. So is it possible that they will get extended for a year or not?
So it's possible based on how they meet their service level agreements with us. So we set metrics, this is what we expect. You get, for an example of a service level measure is, if there's a complaint about a specific issue, you have X amount of time to get to it. So the percentage of time you get to those complaints. There's the schedule of preventive maintenance. So we follow up on that to make sure you're following that schedule. So that's what we would measure them on, whether they're meeting their service level agreements with us.
Okay. All right. I guess you can get a perspective of some of the issues and concerns that have been raised in reference to this transition when there's been contractors and subs that have been doing work for the city for a period of time, and then this transition occurs, and then even when some of those subs try to reach out, I know although from your perspective there was an outreach, but it seems that there was a difference of opinion on that perspective in reference to what was communicated and the opportunities for engaging in conversation. But this is part of a larger dynamic, which I think is problematic in the city, and this goes back to previous administrations where we are not doing all that we can from a procurement perspective to address poverty in our city, especially from an economic development dynamic. And I think it's problematic. That's part of the reasons why I introduced legislation like Best Value or the Local Procurement Initiative, because I don't think we as a city are really using all that we can to address poverty from what we do from a procurement perspective. I understand you only have, this is your one major kind of public property, but it's more of a macro issue in reference to the city that we could be doing more, and this goes across the past number of administrations as well. Okay. I guess I'm the only one. Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, thank you.
Well, before you go, actually, I have some questions on that line of questioning, because I've been talking about this issue for some time now and been very frustrated with it as well. And I want to thank Councilman Green for articulating those concerns. I'm not as familiar with what he's specifically referring to, but I can tell you that in my work in my committees, which are Parks and Recreation and also Health and Human Services, that one of the things that we've talked about extensively is the amount of, not the amount of contracts, but where are our contracts going? And when we talk about Philadelphia having the largest population of people who are living in poverty, building wealth means, for a lot of folks, building a business. And if we farm those businesses out to places all over the country, then it really does exclude a lot of people here in the city who, a small contract, by the city's means, could make all the difference in the world in helping their business to survive and to thrive and to hire folks from the neighborhood who otherwise might not have job opportunities. And, one thing that specifically comes to mind is, a number of contracts, and again, not through your department, but the ones that I'm familiar with, in which, as a chair of Parks and Recreation, in which we've actually been looking at contracts that have been issued in an attempt to reissue those contracts without looking locally, one based, outside, of the city of Philadelphia and Chicago, and one based, to my understanding, as far away as Paris, France. And, we've looked at how is it that this is occurring, and, you've got folks who are here who are providing, the same services and can provide these services locally. And again, they're being provided, they're being issued far outside of the city of Philadelphia. So it's an opportunity to really build wealth And, we certainly want to work with all of our commissioners to make sure that where there's an opportunity, that we do so. And again, the case that I'm thinking of, the contract was issued, and when we asked about it, it was, oh, well, there was only one RFP that responded. Well, there was only one RFP because it was as if the contract was written specifically for, this one entity to be able to respond. So, we just really have to be thoughtful about, if we're really serious about, doing something about the poverty rate in the city of Philadelphia, and if we're really serious about minority participation here in Philadelphia, then I think we have to look at, how contracts are issued, where they're going, who's being affected, and really who's being left out. Because there's a whole lot of folks in Philadelphia who are being left out. And I don't think that it's something that council should be in the business of. Like, this is not, I don't think any of us should be down here, directing contracts or being, very engaged in contracts, except to say where there is a disparity and where folks are being left out, that we need to do better. We need to do a whole lot better. So, and I think that's it. So,
right.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Okay, and if we could have the Office of Property Assessment come forward, Mr. Piper.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Bass and members of City Council. I'm Michael Piper, the City of Philadelphia's Office of Property Assessment's Chief Assessment Officer, and with me today are my Deputy Chief Assessment Officer, James Arrows Jr., and our Interim Administrative Service Director, Maria Holmes. We do not have any additional testimony to amend our April 3rd testimony, but we understand Council has questions for us, and we're here to at least try to answer them.
Okay, very good. One moment. And Councilman Dom?
I guess I'm asking these questions on behalf of another council member. Just got the sheet. I'm just going to read the questions to you.
Okay.
As I understand it, state law requires assessments to be available to the public by March 31st of each year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Page 7 of the OPA trending methodology document states that approximately 40,000 parcels were under review as no trending factor was assigned of March 31st.
That's correct.
What type of parcels are in this group?
Primarily residential. But some non-residential also.
The next question asks, why wasn't work completed on these parcels?
The work was completed, but as part of what we do in looking, to apply some oversight, we saw some trending factors that didn't seem like they applied to several categories of property, and rather than send out assessments that we knew were erroneous or we even had questions about, the law allows us to, in instances where there are mistakes that we can identify, to postpone that assessment for a second mailing.
And when will this review be completed?
That should be completed sometime in June.
Okay. And how long will owners of these properties have to file requests for first-level review after OPA completes its review?
Right, the owners of those properties will be given the same 30-day window to file as anyone else, so we will send them a new assessment notice with a new filing deadline.
And here's another question. How did you calculate the trending factors for non-residential parcels?
For the non-residential parcels, we actually used our consultant, ARUs, who pretty much did a market analysis of the various subcategories of non-residential property, retail, office buildings, and hotel, and we looked at those factors and applied those to those categories.
Okay. Your tax year 2020 residential ratio study presents the results of your analysis, but not the underlying data used to produce those results. Do you plan to post the underlying sales ratio studies that you use to establish the trending factors, as well as the sales ratio studies you use to determine the accuracy of your assessments?
I heard most of what you said, but
Let me repeat it.
I couldn't glean
Yeah.
the question out of
Your
it.
tax year 2020 residential ratio study
Right.
presents the results of your analysis, but not the underlying data used to produce those results.
Okay.
Do you plan to post the underlying sales ratio studies that you use to establish the trending factors, as well as the sales ratio studies you use to determine the accuracy of your assessments?
We do plan on posting that, yep.
Okay, and that's, any time frame on that?
I would say probably within the next month and probably less than a month from now.
This is one of my questions now.
Okay.
On page 23 of the overview of the trending methodology, it shows this zone G, other, as trending down 23.5% in 2020. Values, I guess, went down.
Correct.
Which is a big drop. On page 4 of the methodology overview, it says you examined transactions from 2012 to 2017 for that 2019 reassessment project.
Correct.
How is it possible, though, in this area that they've depreciated by 23.5% in 1 year?
In that particular zone, what we were seeing is there were some parts of that area that it looked like they were overassessed if we applied a positive trending factor, something over 1, and that's just what the market showed us. You won't see that for too many zones. So.
Can you tell us, just for the record, what area this is in the city?
Is this G other you referred to? Yeah, that was something that we split from the original G. If you don't mind, Councilman, I'm going to call our Director of Mass Appraisal, Kevin Keene, up,
That's
because
fine.
Kevin is actually the person that was involved in that analysis.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Keene, the Director of Mass Appraisal, the Director of Mass Appraisal Analysis at the Office of Property Assessment.
So can you tell us where Zone G Other is located in the city?
Zone G Other is east of Broad Street, north of Center City, and below Roosevelt Boulevard, but it's the area that specifically excludes Kensington Fishtown and
Is
the
that
area
above-
right around
above Girard
Temple.
Avenue? Would that be above Girard Avenue?
I'm sorry,
Oh, is that above Girard Avenue?
is it above Girard? I think Girard Avenue might be this current southern boundary.
So it's Girard to the south, up to Roosevelt Boulevard on the north?
Yes, and east of Broad, and the eastern boundary bounds up against the river wards. I might be Frankfurt Avenue. I'm not sure what the eastern
And
boundary
are we
of it
saying
is.
that that area went down 23.5% in value?
No, that's not actually what we're saying. What we're saying is that compared to the 2019 values, that those values for some of those areas had been too high. So even though the market hasn't been moving downwards, that was the adjustment that was needed to bring them to where they should be.
I see, okay. Last question. In the trending methodology, do we take into consideration the effect the 10-year tax abatement has had on the inflation of sales in the zone?
We don't factor the abatement or other exemptions into anything we're doing for this general assessment or even this year for trending. No.
Let me ask you another question about the abatement, actually. Have you seen from the data across the city, when the abatement is over, has there been any change in the value of the real estate once the abatement's over?
Not in the value. I don't think the market reflects that. We do see, well, to answer your question, no,
Okay, you don't see a change in the value?
we don't.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thanks, Council.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Councilman, and there being no other questions, this committee will stand in recess until Wednesday, May 8th, 2019 at 10 a.m., at which time we will reconvene in room 400 in City Hall. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilman.